Finally, it's NFT time at the Solana conference. Can't believe it took us so long, but here we are. I'm absolutely delighted to be sharing the stage with Jemmy today. Jemmy is one of the cultural four founders of Solana culture, so absolutely stoked that you're able to come out. Jemmy, just to get things kicked off, can I just ask you to introduce yourself and give us a bit of a MonkeDAO origin story?
Yeah, I think, just to highlight one point, I was looking through the agenda actually, for the Crossroads, and this is arguably the only agenda around NFTs and, good and bad, but we're still very excited to be part of this. So shout out to the entire staff team. My name is Jemmy. I'm one of the co-founder of MonkeDAO. Right now, the lead executive of MonkeDAO as well. And MonkeDAO is the premier Web3 country club. We run many different communities in a localized manner through this initiative called the local chapters, and we have over 25 different local chapters today all around the world. We love to say that no matter where you are based, we will always have a local chapter around you waiting for you to be a part of it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jimmy. So before we dive into how we make NFTs cool again, I think it's important first to specify what NFTs being cool again looks like. Because if we go back to 2021 and we see Paris Hilton shilling Bored Apes, we see Justin Bieber and Steph Curry repping Bored Apes, and pure mainstream mania, prices going to six figures on random JPEGs, is that really what we think NFTs being cool would look like? Is that what we should be aiming for, first of all, or what's your take here?
Yeah, I think NFTs definitely had a very great, journey altogether. We saw like the transition of how NFTs have been defined, throughout the last 3 to 4 years. I think one thing that we have always looked at it very differently is the origin, largely comes from the origin story of MonkeDAO. MonkeDAO was started not because we wanted it to be a DAO, neither did we want to start a business, neither did we want to run like a company. Literally, MonkeDAO started in 2021 just because we wanted to create a community for people to belong. And that's what MonkeDAO is all about. So for us, although we've, been part of the NFTs craze here and there, of course, like numbers go out, numbers go down, it's all part of the fun of it. But I think for us, one thing that we sort of try to do a little bit differently, and, we sort of define NFTs in our own sort of lane, is that we believe community is the core product for us at MonkeDAO. And I think that's kind of like the key thing. And to kind of the topic around like being cool and whatnot, I think the 2021 wave was really where, we saw NFTs being the key instrument in onboarding the huge mass of potentially like what we call them as retail users. And that's great, right? People just want to have fun, and it's all good when numbers are going up. But you started to see, the sort of implications when numbers also go down. All right. But I think, over the last couple of years, what is also interesting, you see how a lot of teams who have came on with the intention of sort of designing NFTs as a speculative instrument started to fade away, just because people are waking up to the idea or to the harsh reality that, purely relying on speculation alone is not enough and it is not sustainable.
Yeah. So you're touching on that about speculation is not enough and it's not sustainable in itself. Do you think that in the past we saw a lot of things about infra-based NFTs, we talked about gaming NFTs a lot, there was a lot of ideas that NFTs would become this titanic technology that would reinvigorize absolutely everything about business that we know. Do you think there's still room for that? Like, we saw Meta was going to do something with Starbucks that kind of fell through. Do you think that comes back in any way?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest thing to really consider is how we can, do our part by looking at blockchain, NFTs, etc., more so from a technology enabler as opposed to like a speculative instrument, right? And that's the same case for us at MonkeDAO. What we have started to realize, very, differently over the last couple of years is that, of course, coming from the Web3 space from a native fashion is great, right? It gives us that unique angle to what we are as a community about. But I think, for example, you need to really be relevant to the masses, right? And if we truly believe that we are going to onboard the next billion users, and all we are talking about is just like technical jargons that 5,000 people know about, how do you expect people to buy into your story and to understand what you're actually talking about? So just, using MonkeDAO as a core example, we had the main definition of what we would call as the tagline, as MonkeDAO is basically the first community-owned and operated NFT DAO. That is still 100% true. That is still the case. But I think last year or so, we decided to redo everything and say that, hey, let's revamp to make sure that we can future-proof ourselves and make sure that we can be relevant and something that can be understood for the real world. And eventually, we settled on this tagline that says, MonkeDAO is the premier Web3 country club. And that's what we believe, because it's really about, you're not exactly reinventing the wheel. Our core belief at MonkeDAO, has always been the fact that blockchain is a key technology enabler for us to organize communities at scale. The origin of MonkeDAO is also such that, we just wanted to create a place for people to belong in 2021. And there wasn't exactly, that many communities to begin with. There wasn't a place for people to belong. So we wanted to be that place. And eventually, the way it grew very organically clearly shows that there is a need. And, it's just natural human behavior, natural human desire to belong to something, right? And that's what, in our perspective, it should all be about. And I think the topic around like infra NFTs is a slightly different category because it's about owning something. It's almost like using it as a token gating mechanism, which I think is still relevant. And the way that we're doing it is not exactly too different. Think about it, we are a country club. Most of country clubs, you get either like a physical certificate of ownership and whatnot, but instead of that, you get an NFT for MonkeDAO, right? And that's either your Gen 2 or Gen 3 Monkey.
So you talk a lot about the MonkeDAO Country Club and what that represents. Earlier this month, MonkeDAO kind of celebrated its independence, so congratulations for Monkey Independence Day. How does securing those IP rights play into the growth of the Country Club, and how does it push that further?
Yeah, so I think that the Monkey Independence Day is something that most members, really take it very, very well. I think it's something that people treat it with a huge respect and a huge deal, largely because, of the origin story of how MonkeDAO came about. Because like we shared earlier, the whole thesis around MonkeDAO is not so much of like creating a business, creating a company, creating a DAO. It's just a community that organically came through, right? MonkeDAO did not own the SMB IP when we first started. We were just a bunch of community members who truly believe in creating, a community for people to belong. There were like maybe 5 to 10 of us, and then eventually grew to like 40. And it didn't take us too long to realize that, hey, it was the monkey that brought us together, right? And so eventually, what exactly happened was that, we noticed that bringing people together through the NFTs concept is what MonkeDAO is all about, right? And that's kind of like the primary thesis of us. To that question specifically, I think we are definitely trying to push a lot of boundaries around, making sure that NFTs continue to be redefined and trying to push towards like RL applications, trying to be more relevant for people, most importantly.
Okay, so what does that look like specifically? How is MonkeDAO kind of trailblazing that? How are you being pioneers of perpetuating NFT culture?
Apologies. I kind of dropped that on Monkey Independence Day. Yeah, I think, the fact that we kind of acquired the IP sort of gives like the community full right, because we always knew that MonkeDAO was first community owned and operated, but, the fact that the IP was owned by somebody else was always a little bit of like an awkward structure. And so now that, the IP is like fully owned, we can sort of do a lot of things around like, licensing. And that's why some of the initiatives that we have experimented over the last year is like, okay, we have this great IP. How do we make it like even more accessible and relevant to people? So some of the merch example that we've been experimenting now, we think that crypto merch, they are simply just overrated, right? And especially, when you are wearing a merch that screams crypto, blockchain, NFT, how do you expect people to think that you're not a weirdo? Especially when you're trying to market it to the masses, right? Who just, they may have little to no knowledge about NFT. And here you are wearing like, oh, this like NFT thing, this like blockchain thingy. And naturally, even as a crypto native yourself, you get all of this merch, you go to every conferences. I'm sure many of you in this room, over 50% of you probably have more than 5 pieces of crypto merch that is just sitting in the wardrobe and it's not doing anything. It's just collecting dust.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the one thing we realized. How do we make it more relevant? Right. Instead of trying to just create merch for the sake of creating merch, let's try to build a brand. Let's work towards building a brand that is relevant for the masses, which is why nowadays, for all the merge directive for us as a team is that we do not want anything that spells crypto, anything that spells blockchain, anything that spells DAO on the merge. We want to create a brand, a lifestyle brand, and this is an example of the merge that we've started to experiment. Like, this is a decent shirt. Well, most of us have different tastes and preferences, but this is a shirt you can wear out with your friends and family. You won't feel like you are awkward. People won't think that you're a weirdo. It's just a nice little shirt there that has like monkey, right? And sometimes we are trying to develop this brand into like a swoosh logo. So owning the IP gives us the ability to do things like that with the SMB collection exactly.
Yeah, I think that's very true that MonkeDAO has consistently got some of the best merch that we see, very, very consistently. And it's true, like, personally, I don't want to be walking down the streets of the city I live in with, blockchain, Bitcoin logos everywhere, but something that's clean, something that's very abstract, like the MonkeDAO logo, I think is a lot more accessible to a wider audience. So really, really cool there. But the IP is not the only perk of being part of MonkeDAO. Monkey Ventures has performed pretty well. Do you want to kind of give me a bit of a background about how that ties into the overall Monkey thing? Because arguably, if you can get seed access to some emerging Solana projects or other blockchains that perform really well, that's a pretty cool perk to have. And if we're trying to make NFTs cool again, MonkeDAO is doing cool stuff there.
100%. Yeah. Thanks for pointing out, Al. So I think what we were really trying to do with MonkeDAO is that we want to transform MonkeDAO into a self-sustaining ecosystem within. Right? And we want your monkey to be the passport to this self-sustaining ecosystem. And we sort of jokingly made the comment of like a sovereign nation that redistributes opportunities to its members. And basically, this is your passport through your monkey, right? And so what we're doing with this is through a couple of steps. I think Build with MonkeDAO is one of the grant initiatives that we have teamed up with Solana Foundation to roll out the first version, and recently we announced the second version of it as well. So Build with MonkeDAO is essentially a grant program, from MonkeDAO's perspective, where we want to continue to do our part to help push out more relevant support for people who are building across the Web3 ecosystem. We also announced recently that we acquired a bunch of gentries, which we will use to issue to builders as well, from a lockup program. If they are successful grantee, they get access to a lock monkey. And the whole idea is this, right? We want to onboard builders across the Web3 ecosystem, and we do this through the Build with MonkeDAO program and of course other support. Now, Monkey Ventures is a really unique aspect that we have. We kind of experimented with Monkey Ventures, toying around it with the idea around like late 2021, and early 2022, we pushed out the first version of it. The whole idea is to be able to democratize access to high quality deal flow for retail investors. And it's not even a Web2 or a Web3 issue. Think about it, touch your heart. Why is it that most of the investment opportunities, VC funding, has traditionally only been available to people who are either influential or people who are rich and wealthy? And we believe that that shouldn't be the case, and that is our shot at switching things up with MonkeDAO especially. So we said, hey, money from VC is overrated. What about social capital? Regardless of how much money you have raised from any VC, and most of the great teams would have no problem raising funds, these VCs may not be able to give you access to the end users. And that's what we do differently in MonkeDAO. MonkeDAO has a group of native Web3 users. We essentially bring the high quality deal flow access to our users, but most importantly to the different projects. To date, we have funded slightly over 35 projects, I believe, including the likes of like Misten Labs, Sui. Hope I'm allowed to mention this name here. Yes. Tensor, Nine Heroes, some of the most amazing teams across Web3. And consistently, despite the huge rounds that they raise, they continue to make a small allocation for us, largely because they understand the value of human capital and social capital.
Clear.
And sort of giving these end users a front row access to what you're building from the early stage is extremely valuable, because you can get access to feedback, you can get access to users, early adopters from the get-go, and that's one thing that we do differently.
Fantastic. And I think it is so important, because what a lot of VC firms don't have is that they don't have 2,000, 3,000 people who are on chain every day interacting with the ecosystem have a really, really close eye on what's going on. So that's one of the great benefits I think that people can have from Monkey Ventures. Changing direction a bit. Recently, the last few years, we've seen Gen 3 monkeys join the family. How has that affected exclusivity in the Country Hub? Is it great to onboard, thousands more monkeys? Tell me about how the kind of value differentiates between Gen 2 and Gen 3.
This is a great question. I was not exactly expecting this, but this is a conversation that we talked about. Now, first and foremost, I'm sure we have a lot of monkeys in this room, and the Gen 3 monkeys, especially people who are proud to be part of the Gen 3 monkeys, please, make some noise and raise your hands so we can see you. Thank you. So the reason why I decided to do something, just very quick like this is that this is what the Gen 3 power is about, Gen 2 is great because that is linked to the origin story of MonkeDAO. MonkeDAO started purely out of the intention to create a community for people to belong. We truly believe that people is our product. We have decided over the years to not do anything related to token, chasing after things that we're not good at, and do all this staking, Ponzi schemes and whatnot. No hate to that. I think it's great. That's just how the industry works. Different metas over different phases of time. But for us, it's laser focused. Our product is our people. Now, with the Gen 2 collection, limited to 5,000 or so. And of course, at that point, it was also a situation whereby people are literally getting priced out, right? Even if you really like a community, how do you convince your family members, especially for people who are married? Imagine going home, telling your wife, hey, honey, can I just spend 50K on this digital thingy? It's like a digital token. I just want to be part of something that is online. Most people, friends and family would call you crazy, right? And even for yourself, sometimes it's really hard to justify that. So literally the Gen 2 collection was really pricing out a lot of people. And I think, the topic around Gen 2, Gen 3 has always been a relatively sort of sensitive topic altogether. But at the end of the day, the beauty of it is that, you can't really, Gen 3 has brought a lot of great benefits in terms of expanding the community. Now, the beauty of it all is that there's always an intricate balance to have when you talk about expansion versus dilution. And that's exactly what we went through. And over the last year when we first dropped it or so, you know how CT works, right? Any fun narrative spreads like wildfire. But when you're doing something good, usually it takes a while to incubate and put it out all together. So I think over the last year or so, we've really spent a lot of time and effort in terms of helping to correct the narrative and helping people understand the true value of Gen 3, right? Gen 3 is really the instrument for us to be able to go out and onboard a huge mass audience there through another 10,000 pieces. Well, of course, it's not massive per se, but it's another 10,000 pieces, of token access that we can actually use to onboard people. And there are many, many active contributors today who are part of the MonkeDAO network who came from the Gen 3 collection, right? And so we still believe that the Gen 3 collection is a great way to onboard. And the way that we're looking at it, MonkeDAO is the premier Web3 country club. You have two different types of access passes. One is the equity pass, which is the more OG Gen 2 monkey. Then there's a Gen 3 sort of more like a social pass, right? And for us, going out and tell people, hey, we have a great community. We have 25 different local chapters around the world. Web3 is scammy, but if you want to go around and get started in Web3, MonkeDAO is the place to be now. And if you want to get started, it's literally 2 or 3 so for a token, for sort of a token pass to get into this community and you're part of this family versus asking people to spend 40, 50 so, 20, 30, 40 so. I think it's just a lot more convincing that way. So that's the beauty of it. I am a huge believer on the value of Gen 3 and I'll continue advocating it and, making sure that the narrative is as strong as it can be so that everybody too can see the value of it.
And I think all Gen 3 holders love being Gen 3 holders. It's a expanding community. It's such a great thing to be a part of. And I do want to kind of bring back to the localized events that you're talking about with localized chapters. What would your advice be to someone who has just bought a monkey and they're on the fence about going to one of these events? Because it can be quite intimidating to go from, hanging out on Discord to actually meeting all these people in real life. How do you break that step and kind of what can you expect when you go to your first localized chapter event?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the whole thesis about building local chapters is such that for any communities, if you do want to build a scalable community, purely depending on a leadership team that is like distributed all around the world, especially with a limited reach, you will only be able to target a very small group. Right, and it doesn't help. MonkeDAO, for example, using us as a reference, we have always hosted community-driven events, a very exclusive one for our membership. Last year, Breakpoint, for example, we have over 400 members attending, our MonkeDAO events in Singapore, Breakpoint 2024. And this 400 may not be huge, but for a community size that is, potentially around like 3,000 on-chain members, and to be able to bring 400 members, verified members, because we don't run and build Telegram groups in a non-gated manner. Every single experiences, every single sort of Telegram group that is part of the MonkeDAO network, they are all Metrica verified. So that means when you join into something, it is actually a safe space. So that is the whole, sort of way that we're sort of trying to build a safe space so that people can actually be more comfortable in wanting to participate in all these local chapters. Now, another initiatives that we have sort of ensured that we do a little bit more is exactly, finding local ambassadors to spearhead these local chapters initiatives, right? Because, when you are not exactly part of the community natively, you are organizing something, you may not be so sensitive to like things like culture, preferences, food and whatnot. And the beauty of working with local chapters is that they know exactly, the profile of people that they will be attracting. So to anyone who is a new monkey and you're contemplating on whether to join, a monkey, event, a monkey local chapter event, I say go for it. Why? First and foremost, any monkey event is 100% a safe space because everyone is Metrica verified. So you need to be a verified member to be part of that. Second is that our local ambassadors, shout out to a bunch of them here, some of them are here, BBs as well, and a few other amazing contributors there. We have these 25 different local chapters that continue to do great work. And they are the one who basically grow this community from the ground up. And they are very friendly guys that we work with them very closely to make sure that they are a great fit to the community that align with what MonkeDAO represents. So 100%, you don't have to worry. MonkeDAO is meant to be the safe space for you to be a part of. It's like a home away from home.
Fantastic. I'm going to turn to the governance side of the DAO. What role does the average monkey holder play in DAO governance? Is it voting based? Do you want to come me through kind of how proposals operate?
Now, the harsh truth and a little bit of a hot take that, it's a little bit weird for this to be coming from us. But MonkeDAO in 2021, we were literally the first, community on Solana that went out and said that let's call ourselves MonkeDAO. And truth to be told, we may not even truly knew what a DAO was about. And so we just went out and sort of experimented with a bunch. So the way in which we have been defining governance in 2021 till today, 4 years later, has changed dramatically. Now, one key takeaway, that I could probably share is that, decentralization is sometimes, to some degree, if not done right, a little bit not as beneficial. And I think if we could turn back time a little bit more, what we would have chosen to do is progressive decentralization. Now, and that's exactly what we've been shifting towards over the last couple of years. In 2021, we went out, we're like, a few of us are just like happy, excited, euphoric. Let's go out and call ourselves a DAO. We went out with full-scale decentralization. All right, proposals, this is such, this is the quorum. Okay, this doesn't work, let's, revise it and whatnot. And very quickly, we realized that there are some nuances around it. Especially when markets are a little bit quieter, you see a relatively slower degree of participation, right? And so we sort of adjusted the way governance is supposed to help us work. And, I think a couple of communities sometimes what they end up finding themselves is they end up getting bottlenecked by not being able to do anything because governance is just not doing anything. There's either you can't hit quorum, there's not enough participation, or people are just always fighting with one another. Imagine if today Crossroads did not cater lunch for everybody. Crossroads decide to say we're going to make Crossroads a DAO, right? And everyone is going to vote on lunch. Everyone is going to vote on dinner, and everyone is going to vote on your favorite closing party. Now, that's exactly the situation that we went through, and why today, we sort of arrive at a stage whereby we are 100% not going to remove governance. We see that governance is a very unique part of what made MonkeDAO in the first place. But at the same time, we are also sort of working through a series of, revisions and different sort of iterations such that people can still participate. So now today, there's a workshop process. Anyone can basically put up a proposal via the workshop stage. If you are a Gen 2 monkey, of course, that is like the equity structure in which the different holders can get access to. Gen 2 get access to the governance. Of course, as a member of MonkeDAO, regardless if you're a Gen 2 or Gen 3, your role is to contribute in the governance process through active discussion. So you can actually feedback through, okay, whether this proposal that is being raised is sound. There's a process and there's a time frame in place where, okay, across the 7 days that the proposal is raised, everyone can participate and provide feedback. Assuming there's a certain, sort of level of participation and engagement that is achieved, then it moves on to the vote proposal stage. So workshop, vote proposal, and the vote proposal, of course, requires a certain level of quorum and participation as well. Then it moves on to the actual on-chain vote. So we've moved everything on-chain now for actually the main sort of like vote structure. We call it the MonkeDAO vote site. And it's also an open source voting platform. If anybody needs access, you can easily get a hold of it. So that's how the MonkeDAO governance is structured today. Regardless if you're a Gen 2 or Gen 3 monkey, you will get access to it.
Okay, fantastic. So I kind of want to bring things full circle. It is my personal belief that NFTs have come full circle in this sense, and that it began as building online communities using PFPs. You get like-minded people all kind of collecting things. They go, I like this NFT because it represents me, or because I like this trait, or things like that. And when it started, it was mostly collection focused, and there wasn't this kind of number go up, get the FP, ramp up the price. And I think as we've seen attention leave the NFT market, we've almost come back to that. And people are now shopping for NFTs not because they see it as a quick flip or a good investment, but because they want to be a part of MonkeDAO. So throughout a languishing NFT market, we've seen the best performing collections are things like Boogles, there's things like DKS, there's things like Lucid Drakes, these really tight-knit communities of really collection-based pieces. Would you consider MonkeDAO part of that kind of group?
Yeah, I think, I think those names that you've mentioned in terms of the different, communities out there, I think they are all, pathing out their own way of in which they believe communities should be built. And I definitely agree that there's a lot of value in building tight-knitted communities like that. And I think the slightly different angle that we also try to undertake is how do we build a community that is global, right? And also retains some element of that curated, structure such that people still have that close-knitted family. And, DKS, Lucid Drakes, Boogles, they are all, friends of us across the ecosystem. And there's a lot of cross-pollination because, in the early days of Solana, everybody who were bullish about NFTs, they would, naturally get hold of different pieces of NFTs, etc. But to that point, whether if we see MonkeDAO fall into that sort of category, I think 100%, because there's always, that desire to be part of, part of a collective, right? And that's what we briefly discussed about. People have been, collecting cards, collecting stamps, and there has been interest groups all around because they identify with a certain activity or something that they like. And that's exactly what NFTs are about, right? The beauty about NFTs, different from, generic tokens is that there's actually a collective, love for something. People actually recognize themselves as part of the collection, part of the family. And, that you are part of something special because, you're part of a collection, right? The whole NFTs itself, you have your own unique identity, but you are also part of, something bigger. So I think that's really the unique part about it altogether. And we think that, the beautiful part, you go to a monkey event or you go to any event and any conferences around the world, there will always be a monkey. That's the beauty of it. But you will never truly know everybody in the MonkeDAO community. So there's always a certain level of excitement when you go to a MonkeDAO event. You will always meet somebody new. There's always something exciting, but still there's the sense of familiarity every time you walk through the door.
Fantastic. Well, I was going to ask, what does a successful 2025 look like for MonkeDAO, but it sounds like you've just summarized it perfectly. Jimmy, thank you so much for coming. It's been a real pleasure having you. Everyone, one last round of applause for Jimmy, and we'll probably get off to lunch, I think, maybe. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic.